Right, today I'm joined by Emma Dutton, who's the CFO at myenergi. She's been there for the last 6 years, overseeing, I think it's fair to say, hypergrowth. Emma, thanks so much for joining us. Do you want to give us a little rendition of who you are and what you've been doing?
Sure. And so joined myenergi, as you say, 2019. I'm the CFO of the business. I've had the privilege of seeing that business grow from a very, very small startup in the little Lincolnshire Wolds to a very large international organisation. The business has grown arms and legs over those 6 years that I've been there, from 2 million startup to a £67 million business. I'm a Connect Yorkshire entrepreneur in residence. I'm also the chair of the Connect Yorkshire committee, so I actually help lots of organisations in the Yorkshire region, helping them with, dealing with the general day-to-day business challenges. But I run a forum which helps them also have an independent voice and sit in a very confidential environment and have those communications.
Brilliant. So you alluded to the size of the business when you joined back in 2019, just a couple of million. What did the finance team look like back then, and how's that changed from then till now?
I joined the business actually as a consultant, so as a portfolio FD. They did have a portfolio FD in there, and they actually called me in tears about that. They were at a business where it had basically got itself into a bit of a tiz, really. There was no finance department as such. There was one person who was pretty much admin and doing everything, really. So it was basically ripping the Band-Aid off and building it from the ground up. So the department back then, there was non-existent, I'd say. But where we are today, we've got 13 very capable and very strong financial people in our finance team. It's a centralised finance function. So we look after the whole of the operation, from Australia right through to Europe and Ireland and the UK.
And talk me through that then. What roles have you got within your team at the moment?
Yeah, so we've got an FP&A manager, we've got a group financial controller, we've got a financial accountant, we've got 2 senior management accountants, and then you've got your transactional team, we've got payroll as well. We use external tax advisory in all our local territories to make sure that we just remain compliant. So
huge growth of the finance team from pretty much 0 to 13 over 5 years. You'll have seen loads of CVs, you'll have interviewed loads of people. What are you looking for beyond the CV when you're hiring?
Beyond the CV has definitely got to be a cultural fit in the organisation. We have a very diverse team, but we have to make sure that we've got the right people in the right place. But cultural fit is absolutely paramount to us. We can teach skills, we can train people, but they have to fit the organisational's culture. myenergi is quite a dynamic organisation. It's very challenging, it's very fast-paced. It's not for everybody, but that has to be absolutely paramount because we're open plan office. Everyone works together cohesively in collaboration. We do lots of events together as well. So we just want to make sure that we've got the right character in the organisation to make sure that it fits well with everyone else.
And when you're growing at the sort of rate that you have done, how do you balance that technical skill set though with the cultural fit? Because you might get hugely dynamic people, but they might not have the technical side of what you want, and vice versa. So how have you struck that balance?
It's been challenging because where we're located, talent pool isn't the strongest. So we haven't always had that luxury of being able to be very selective. The one thing that we would say is that from a character point of view is the one way that we've kind of said, okay, if they're the right character and the right type of mindset, then okay, they may not be technically strong. There are some roles that they have to be technically strong in, and like with the financial accountant, we report in IFRS format, so we have to make sure that that individual understood what they were doing. But we were really fortunate with our financial accountant because they were both culturally fitting and also very much technically astute. So we've done really well in that sense, but it is difficult, and I would rather choose somebody over character, over technical ability, unless it's a specialism where we would then have to look at the compromise.
So you came in right at the outset, building a finance team from scratch. And actually that isn't the first time, is it? It's not your first rodeo doing this. So what do you think is the biggest mistake that you see businesses make when they're at that early stage in building a finance team?
One of the key things that I think I would love to see in businesses in the very, very early stages that they go out and get some sound advice, because you've got people within there who are doing a whole raft of things which are maybe not compliant. And it's and they have to beg, steal and borrow in lots of startups. And I do see that a lot, especially with my background doing the portfolio work before I even came to myenergi. What I would recommend though is that they just get some sound advice, especially when setting up your financials, because trying to unpick that when your company accelerates is a lot harder than people realise. And especially when you get the wrong ERP system in place or the wrong finance package, just speak to somebody with some guidance and advice just to say, this is how I want to start my business. Start it on the positive footing, not on one that you've got to kind of almost unwind to try and get everything put back right as corporate finance needs to be.
Have you seen that? Have you seen that happen in real life, where people have they've just gone off, they've grown, and finance is the last in the chain to be dealt with, and the impact that that's had? What kind of things have you seen?
I see a lot of people managing their business just by what the bank balance says. Seen that on so many occasions. myenergi was no different when I first came there. The only difference is that they didn't have any money. So actually arriving at that organisation where they had a huge opportunity ahead of them but lacked the working capital that they needed. They needed to have somebody on the ground actually dealing with all of those aspects of the business. It's not just from a finance point of view and a compliance point of view, but also about, the longevity of the organisation. If they'd have taken the opportunity to actually onboard somebody who knew what they were doing earlier, the business would not have been the place where it was when I joined. It would have been so much easier to kind of go into that business once it had actually got that solid footing. It's not for everybody, admittedly, but I do think, being a portfolio FD for as long as I have been before myenergi, you do really need to kind of take stock of what you actually want to do with your organisation. But the finances are not just about what numbers you've got on your bank balance. It's a lot larger than that in most organisations.
So you've had to develop team members right across finance teams in various organisations. I'm interested in how you do that, and I suppose particularly one eye on those high-performing, high-aspiring people that maybe want your job eventually.
I'd say with the first instances, have really regular one-to-ones. One of my key ways of working is I always have a one-to-one with my direct reports at least every other week. And we don't talk always about finance, we talk about them as individuals. I want people to actually feel as though that they're in a place of trust where they can sit and talk about where their aspirations are, but also more importantly about how long it's going to take to get there. You do see people where they're really strong, they're really hungry for the title or the role, but not necessarily got the grounding that they need to actually carry them through to that. Because the worst thing ever, being a CFO is probably one of the most stressful jobs in the world. And anybody who thinks that it's easy, that they're either got really lucky or they've actually managed to find themselves something unique. But a CFO is not always about being that sounding board just from a finance point of view. You're actually looking at every single aspect of the organisation. You're having to mitigate the risk from not only financially, but also from cybersecurity, HR issues and everything else that comes along with it. But in terms of the individual, I act more of as a mentor than anything, and I would not allow anybody to fall on their own sword. I do want people to be evolved and grow at the right pace, because when you are at the very, very top and everyone's looking to you to make those decisions, it can be quite lonely. So I do think that if there is any, budding CFOs out there who genuinely want to make that CFO move, get a mentor, get someone to actually support you through that transition. It is so important to get it right. And you don't want to be sat there thinking, I've now got the job, but I have not got the grounding to actually support what I want to do. So yeah, it is very much about mentoring those people. And I personally do mentor a lot of my team. I have multiple touch points throughout the organisation, but everybody I've worked with, it's definitely about making sure that they're the best possible version of them.
I'm going to assume you've made some mistakes, or certainly some learnings, let's call them learnings, over the years of developing team members and hiring people. What is the biggest one? Somebody's listening to this, they want one takeaway from you. What's the biggest one with hiring talent?
The biggest learning I'd say I've made over my career is that you always know when somebody's not quite right. And when you know that, just fire fast. Do not kind of sit there and think they'll get there, they'll get there, they'll get there, because guess what? They never do. And you almost kind of regret waiting because you've almost waited maybe another 3 months before that decision has been made. I've even had situations where people beneath me have kind of said, no, they'll get there, and you want to give them the learning that I've learned. So they've experienced exactly the same situation, and then when it's come to the crunch, it's like, yes, you was right, and yes, we should have fired fast. So yeah, that would be the biggest learning that I think I've made over my career. You know when somebody's not right. They're never going to be right, because the reason why you've got the doubts is because they're not right.
How long do you give it?
Honestly, it'd probably be within the first month. And if they've not started to demonstrate within the first month that they're actually cutting it, then you actually need to take stock and ask them outright whether or not they think that they've made the right decision. Because this is a two-way street nowadays. People hire and people take roles, and it all has to kind of be aligned. And if it's not aligned, then someone's not going to be happy, and it's either going to be the employer or the employee, and they end up leaving anyway. So you've got to get it right.
And you mentioned there about maybe letting your team experience some of that pain.
You do.
Where do you sit on that now? Do you let them experience the pain, or do you shortcut it for them and go, no, look, they're not right?
I'd say more now I am pushing more of that decision-making downwards towards the senior leadership team in organisations that I've worked with. So you have to let them experience it for themselves. Albeit I may know already that the decision, what they will end up making is one, but if they need a little bit of persuasion, there's no harm in giving them that either. So
we've talked about some of the high performers that you manage and that you develop and mentor along the way. They'll have loads of options. You know, you're getting headhunted left, right and centre all the time as a high-profile senior finance person. Knowing that they've got options, what do you do to retain them in the business?
One of the reasons why people came to myenergi is because of the ethical side of the organisation. So if you actually asked anybody in myenergi, why are you here? It's because they want to serve a business which is serving a higher purpose. So the green energy movement is really key to a lot of people. That is one of the main staying points for most people at myenergi. But we also are really competitive with our benefits, our salaries. We offer 9-day fortnight, we offer flexible working environment. It's a business which is trying to be balanced in its approach. We want people to kind of come to the organisation. And nowadays, people want that work-life balance. And people talk about, well, work is life and life is part of work. But the reality is people do actually want time to be able to leave the office when they want to, when they need to pick their kids up from school. And as an organisation, we're trying to be quite proactive about that. We offer quite a lot of people, especially in the finance team, they work a 9-day fortnight. And it works really well for finance because you always have that month-end close and everybody has to put extra effort in every month-end. And they used to kind of write little timesheets, whereas nowadays, we kind of just say, just do the 9-day fortnight. They get an extra 26 days holiday a year. And it works really, really well because they are rested. They do come back into work re-energised to actually move forward again. And before you know it, every 4 weeks you're doing another month end. So it helps us to kind of retain those people. But I do think as long as you're doing the training, you're actually looking at them from a PDR point of view, you're mentoring them in the right way, you're working with them to try and get them to the next level. And you may not have a role for them to promote up to, but as long as you're expanding their role and the diversity that they have in terms of experience, then it'll give them so much more. They'll be so much more of a good rounded individual. And they will move on from myenergi. I'm under no illusion from that. But they'll move on when they're ready. So I think in lots of ways, we do go above and beyond to try and support people.
Now, the 9-day fortnight, I remember you telling me about this, and it blew my mind because it's quite a brave move, isn't it? There's not many companies doing this. So just talk me through what it actually means in practical terms. Basically,
what we do is we have every individual who works in the finance team, they do like an extra half hour a day for 9 days over a 2-week period, and they get every other Friday off. It works really well for us as a business because of the month end. The month end situation, everyone works extra hours. They don't have to kind of do anything other than kind of take the 9-day fortnight. They get an extra 26 days holiday a year from doing it. And by doing that, it actually makes sure that they're rested, they've got respite, but they come back energized back into work. You know, finance, the way that it operates with the month-end cycle, is quite draining sometimes, but it actually gives them a little bit of freedom back to allow them to do what they want to do.
So a founder comes to you and really early stage, and they've gone, right, okay, what finance team? I've never built one before. What would I do? What advice do you give them?
Any founder which is starting a new organisation, I would highly recommend that they go and get themselves some financial advice. Hiring a fractional CFO is a really good way to do that. You're not paying for a full-time person, and you can even, some of them do it by the hour. You know, you can actually get some really solid advice from a fractional CFO. They'll help you get your business established quickly, but they'll also put the right procedures in place, the right finance system that you need to track. The world has changed, everything's digital nowadays, so you don't get away with sending documents into company's house and things of that nature anymore. But I would highly recommend that you get that. You know, if I could look back at my career and all the things that we've talked about today, it would be all those founders that are out there, just get some financial advice to actually set your company up with, you know, success in mind. It helps. It helps a lot.
So to wrap up, always like to ask this question to everyone that we interview. What do you see in brilliant people? What do you see habits and traits that brilliant finance people have that you wish others knew mattered?
I'd say the biggest one is they have to be able to communicate. So being in finance, you know, you see the numbers, you understand the numbers, you know what's going on, but having the art of being able to explain that to non-finance people is a trait that it has to be really, really embraced. I've met so many accountants over my life where they just hand you the numbers and not actually explain what anything means. So they've got to appreciate the audience and who it's for. If you've got strong finance people who actually can communicate and communicate well, you know, they understand what's going on behind the numbers. It's not just producing a set of financials and then they say, here you go, and then just expect you to understand it. Being able to actually articulate and say exactly what they want them to hear is probably one of the strongest things I see from most finance people today. Long gone are the days where finance is just a back office function. You have to be an added value function to the organisation. So if you've got finance people who are very vocal and are actually very conscious about the spend in the organisation, that's the best type of person you want, because they're actually going to be the one who's going to stick it under your nose and say, look at this. So for me, it's the art of communication and being able to communicate well.
Brilliant. There you go. Communication is the number one key that we need in brilliant finance people. Emma, thanks so much for joining us today for this interview. If you'd like to see more interviews, then please stay tuned.